Well, welcome everybody. This is the Art Take. We're attempting to do this live, and we are doing it live.
We are
This is
now.
our this is our first time doing it live. I'm Pete. With me is Chris, and our special guest today is Nick Gustafson from. You might know him from Los Angeles Photo Alliance. You might know him
Nick's
from
over
his
there.
Twitch account, Carbon Punks. But in this episode, we're going to talk community.
That's right.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, no worries. Just to plug our stuff for your Twitch folks, like Pete said, he's Pete and I'm Chris, and we're doing this podcast called The Art Take, where we offer up our opinions on art and our respective journeys. I'm a photographer, and I draw and sometimes write poetry, and Pete has studied sushi as well as drumming and has gone to school for both of those. So that's a little bit on us. And you can find us on Instagram at The Art Take, no spaces or underscores or anything. On YouTube at The Art Take also. And our email is thearttake@gmail.com.
Perfect. So I guess let's get into it.
Yeah.
We have Nick here. We're talking community.
Not
I
the
know,
TV show.
yeah, right. I know Nick from Los Angeles Photo Alliance, and I think you do, Chris. Chris, you do too, right?
Yep.
Cool. So maybe Nick, you want to talk about how Los Angeles Photo Alliance came about, and maybe give a little background and let everybody know who the guest is. I guess, right?
Yeah. How Los Angeles Photo Alliance came about. Sorry, I was reading chat. Might have some technical difficulties on the Twitch side, so we can't hear you guys.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, I started doing like photo meetups. What was it, like 3 years ago or something like that? On my own personal Instagram, I just said, let's meet up and like have a little photo walk. And I was just posting that to my viewers because I only had like a couple. Well, actually, I knew that I had a lot of like photo friends, but I was pretty new to photo and relatively inexperienced, like technically, and also just didn't have a lot of resources myself. I don't know. I just wanted to meet people who were in photo, and or like meet up with more people, and so I just threw one like on a Saturday off my personal Instagram, and we had like 10 or 15 people show up, I think, which was super cool because I don't do a good job advertising, and I certainly didn't then, like on the first ever photo walk. But like made some new friends, met some new people that day, and it just went so well. The vibe was so good. We did like a little photo walk in Chinatown, LA, and so I just started like doing them every week. I was just working like Monday through Friday at the time, and so Saturdays were free, and I just I started throwing them like every Saturday morning, and it just kind of grew from there. At a certain point, I was like, I should probably make this like its own little its own group, and so I took it off my personal Instagram and tried to come up with a name for it, and started Los Angeles Photo Alliance, and it grew in the number of people, and Chris kind of was always showing up, and so Chris helped me out with some of like the logistics and posting and taking over some Instagram responsibilities, and also just kind of helping to bring people in and make them feel welcome. And yeah, I mean, all we did at the photo walks was we met up for coffee in the morning, and brought our cameras, talked about gear, and drank coffee, and then just kind of loosely just decided when it was time to roll out and just walk around and take some photos. And how long did we do them for, Chris? 2 years?
Yeah, I feel like a year and a half to 2 years.
Yeah.
I think I came in when, I don't know, you guys were pretty well set up, maybe like 6 months into it. Do you remember?
Wow. Did it take that long for you to show up? 6 months?
Maybe. But I think like the main thing was that it was kind of like a word of mouth thing, right? it was kind of just like you had like a handful of people, and then they kind of told their other handful of people.
Yeah. And it was insane how effective it was. Like, not any credit of our own. It was insane how effective it was. I think there's like a larger lesson to be learned there too, that like, I mean, as soon as you just like reach out and have some kind of like casual, fun art event that, you know, helps people to meet new people, not feel like it's competitive. And, you know, people know that they're going to be able to show up and not be judged and just, you know, take their, I'm sure it's, you know, different with something like painting, you know, because people can see your painting when you're painting in front of them if you were at a painting meetup. Whereas like, film photography meetup, you know, people aren't going to be able to see your photos if you don't want them to. But anyway, I'm getting off of my point. My point was that like, it was extremely effective in just like, we didn't have any film meetups in LA as far as I knew before that, at least not in central LA. And the pool of people that were there to hear about it and that were willing to come out too it seemed to be never ending, because as long as we were throwing them, more people were showing up.
And faces every time.
And so I can't stress enough how little effort I put into like actually reaching new people too. So like, it was insane how effective the word of mouth was. Just like somebody came through and they had a good time and they just told somebody else. Like I would see somebody on the street with a film camera and I would invite them. Like maybe half the time they would show up, but that was the extent of it. The like promotion really, and just posting on Instagram. 2-hour followers, you following more like film people or whatever. And that's pretty much like what like the community building of like, or the process of community building looked like, for me anyway. And I think for you too, Chris, when we were both like having a good hand in throwing it on a regular basis, right?
Yeah. I think for me, the drawing point was that it was kind of like a hobbyist thing, and it wasn't like a very like specialized thing either. Like if you were just beginning, or if you were like in it for a while, it's just a good time, and a good time to share, you know, everybody's love for photography. So there wasn't a lot of pressure, like you're saying. Like it wasn't like a pro thing or like an elite thing where you have to be invited or anything. It's just kind of like everybody would come out, and there were like people who came who have been like shooting photography their entire lives, and like even some like professional type people who like do it as a profession would come out. But like the vibe was always to have a good time. And I think when we were telling people about it, or when our friends or people who came would tell people about it, that was something that was really clear and came across.
Yeah, when I first came to an LA Photo Alliance meetup, I think that was last year, to be honest with you. Like, and the first meetup was 50 people. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, there were like 50 people, and we took like a massive group photo in front of the Disney concert hall.
That was the first one you came to, huh?
Yeah. And it was like so many people. I was like, dang, I can't believe this, you know, because I went to another like photo meetup too. It was the beers and cameras thing, and you know, it's a very different vibe, and it's fun too, you know. But with this one,
it's also just a different format too.
Yeah, it's a different format. Very different thing, and both of them are fun in their own ways. With this one, I found it was more about walking and taking photos and hanging out and being with each other, like just being with the community, rather than just like, you know, an education system or a situation where you're like, oh, this is how you use this camera, which both have their pluses and benefits and stuff like that. And
absolutely,
I enjoy going to both.
Yeah, because there's a distinct lack of structure to the way that like we went about throwing Los Angeles Photo Alliance.
Yeah, when I was going to ask, like, when you mentioned you started on your Instagram, you started the Photo Alliance community on your personal Instagram. Were you did everybody know you as a photographer? Like, how did you start as a photographer, or how did you get your ground in art, I guess? Like, how did that start?
I guess that's a good question. That's a really good question. I hadn't really thought too much about it, but yeah, I certainly didn't have a reputation as I can't imagine that I had a reputation as like even like an exceptional photographer, much less like a professional photographer who people like really looked up to. Because I was just like a couple years into photography, and the style of photography that I did was very like explorative, you know, like I was still a bike messenger at the time. And all I did was I just took my camera out with me when I was working and just took photos of like whatever I thought was interesting. And now looking back at those photos, I'm like, you know, I don't dislike them, but they were very explorative, you know, and, you know, certainly like not like a professional, you know, photographer. So I don't think that like any following that Los Angeles Photo Alliance came off of like the strength of my clout or anything like that. It was just like other people knew that, you know, it's going to be film cameras. And so they just, you know, they just came out and had a good time. Yeah, I mean, it didn't. I don't think it had to really have too much of a reputation because people knew it was a casual thing.
Well, the nice thing that I found out right away, like I said, compared to you guys, like I'm very new to the Photo Alliance. And one of the things that I wanted to touch on in this conversation with you, and I think you wanted to touch on too, was the active inclusivity. And it's one of the things like I felt immediately from Photo Alliance is, you know, you touched upon it earlier, like we're not looking at anybody's photos immediately unless somebody did bring a digital camera, which is completely fine to bring. But we were all inclusive, and I just felt immediately welcome, like by Chris and by you too. It's like, you know, we had conversations, you and I, Nick, and I'm like, oh man, this guy's talking to me like he's actually invested in me as a person, you know, and we barely knew each other, you know, and it's like that active inclusivity speaks volumes in the range in which LA Photo Alliance has, you know. It's that type of inclusivity that makes people want to come, and why people want to tell people like, hey, come join us at this Photo Alliance thing that's happening next week, you know, and stuff like that, you know. And I think that's why it grew and grew and grew and grew, because it's just the inclusivity that made it bigger than, you know, the art itself, I guess.
That's dope, dude. That's really good to hear from you. Yeah, it's like fulfilling to hear that from you, because it was important to me that it was inclusive, and that it's important to me that, like, you know, my Twitch channel now is inclusive, and that like art community in general is inclusive, because mostly because like I have you know, I've struggled with like social anxiety my whole life, and so if I were you and I came to that exact event as like a participant, or like a new participant and not an organizer, and like nobody talked to me, it would cement my like self-image that like, yeah, I'm an outsider and I don't have what it takes to like really fit into this social circle, or like maybe it's my photos aren't good enough, like my camera isn't thick enough, or like whatever, like the billion things that could go through my mind, and definitely would, if just like nobody fucking talked to me.
Right.
Like and just to not have somebody show interest. I've been in a lot of social situations like that, and I don't necessarily like fault everybody who's been there, you know, for having their close friends and sticking with their close friends and just talking to them or whatever. But like, I've been in a lot of social situations, and not necessarily like art communities, but where I just I wasn't really included, or, you know, to a certain extent, maybe I excluded myself with my own like self-talk. But it's important to consider, like, I think for anybody anywhere who's trying to throw something, like, you have to be inclusive, and there's always the possibility that like somebody could be like self-talking to themselves that way. Somebody could really like, and moreover, like that person has just as much potential to like be a good photographer, for instance, or to be a community organizer, for instance, or to run a charity, or to be a mentor to another would-be photographer. They have like so much potential to have like a really positive impact. You know, not just me, not just you, like anybody who came out to the Photo Alliance things, and what community does is gives people an opportunity to like, network, learn those lessons of what it looks like to have somebody who's including you or being a mentor. You know, it gives people an opportunity like, oh, so plenty of us were just like, oh, I've got this extra camera, you can borrow it, you can have it, have this extra roll of film or whatever. And those little things, dude, like if somebody doesn't give you that camera one day, you don't take up photography. Some people, it doesn't stick for them. Or if somebody didn't include you or give you some solid advice or make you feel included, you don't do photography. You don't turn photography into your career or whatever. Not that is the end goal of photography, but it could have a huge impact. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think like to touch up on, or at least to highlight something is, it's nice to have somebody there who is understanding that there will be people who are afraid to come to these things, and just getting to it is a mountain itself. Just going to the Photo Alliance for your first time, or any community, not even just Photo Alliance. If you want to get into pottery or knitting or something like that, or motorcycle clubs, I don't know, but
probably especially motorcycle clubs. Might get my ass kicked.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. It's like we have, as humans, this internal voice that tells us all the negative things that we can tell us constantly, right? Yeah. And to like have somebody, or have anybody just like let you know as soon as you walk in that your voice is important is a goal that every art community should have first. Like that's number one, is to let everybody know that whoever's in the door, like good and bad isn't a thing in the arts. It's your voice. Like your voice is more important than anything, and that's something.
Or even just that you are there and that you exist, right?
Exactly.
From what Nick was saying, and like as somebody who was part of the Photo Alliance for a long time and helped organize events and did outreach and stuff, I would just like to sort of like highlight that.
Please.
I think it's sort of like the responsibility of the people who organize it to make that kind of atmosphere. So if you're listening and you're thinking of like starting like some sort of local community, or maybe not even local, maybe like an internet community.
Even if it's just a Twitch channel, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's important to keep that in mind and just not just make it for your friends, but to always like have that in mind, that new people are coming and it's your responsibility as somebody who organizes or someone who leads or somebody who's even been there before to grow the community, make people in it feel comfortable.
Yeah, and as it grows too. Oh, sorry, Nick. But I was going to say, like, as it grows, you need to have multiple people, because like I said, like 50 people were at my first Photo Alliance,
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised that I was able to talk to, I didn't even know who the head guy was, But,
yeah.
But just having like someone like you, Chris, there too was very positive,
Yeah. I want to take it a step further too, because in regards to like inclusivity and it benefiting like the individual who's being included, I would also really say that it's super important for anybody who has a platform or resources to keep it in mind that like inclusivity doesn't just benefit the person who's included. It also benefits the whole community, the future of the community, the vibe of the community, like the culture of the community. I've been a part of like a couple other art like centered kind of communities or jobs or like workplaces that claim to be inclusive, but don't really exercise that or kind of like acknowledge what it looks like to be excluded. What I don't think they had an understanding of what it was like to be excluded, because I think they always just had resources and confidence. And to not like be genuinely exercising inclusivity does your whole operation a huge disservice, because the only people who have a voice, who are given a platform or a voice within that community are people who will just speak the loudest, man. They already speak the loudest. Mm-hmm. They're just willing to talk over other people. And that's usually men. It's usually white people or whatever. Like you don't get a diverse, you don't get a diverse point of view from your community, and like the culture is going to suffer for it. It's gonna be toxic because there's going to be infighting. People are just not going to be happy. There's going to be like more infighting than maybe there would be otherwise, and it's going to be kind of like full of strife in one way or another. I think I've seen it to be true in a lot of workplaces too. So I think that money has something to do with it too. But maybe that's also a reason why I tried to. I just never had the drive to like try to do anything money related with Lapa. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, because I've been in one of the biggest toxic communities there is, like the performing music communities, like there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of competition, and like usually the person who is in charge of the community, and it's usually like jam sessions or something like that, right? Like if you want to be a musician and you want to get your name out there, you have to go to a jam session, and you want to talk toxicity.
Show off your chops.
Yeah, it's like that's the most toxic male dominant community I've ever been a part of, aside from
kind of starts to be a competition of like who can tear each other down the most and be convincing the most
100%.
So that other people look worse. Like 100%. It's not even just like you better be really good, you better have like sick chops, man. No, it's like I heard that,
dude, it's disgusting. And if you're a woman and you're going to be assumed to be a vocalist, and you're not going to be invited regardless. And I'm seeing music, like a lot of like music friends post on Instagram about like, oh, the music community is toxic. And it's like, yeah, well, I'm glad you're finding out now, because it's been that forever. It's been like that since forever. And it's like, it's disgusting. And that's the kind of like, when money's involved or competition's involved, art's going to die.
And when we feel like our careers are on the line, and it necessarily is like when we feel like necessarily the end product of our goal has to be having a financially successful career.
Yeah.
That's really fucking tricky, dude.
Yeah, it's rough, man. It's rough. And like,
I think that we can still operate in a healthy way within that like unfortunate, like currently necessary like mode of operations. Like I think that we could still be inclusive and lift each other up all towards like us being able to, if it is going to be like our career, we can do that. We can flip the script for sure.
Absolutely. And like it's really nice, like even though it's kind of late that like a lot of artists or musicians rather are sort of getting hip to this toxic environment. Better, honestly, like I don't really like the saying better late than never, but in this situation it's like it's good, because now you have a lot of people who are recognizing like, oh yeah, I was that asshole who didn't let this saxophone player on the bandstand because I thought he wasn't good, or I was that asshole that didn't invite any women or anybody to like come up on stage or something like that.
It's just another example of how like in a lot of ways we might be patting ourselves on the back right now as a culture for like being kind of woke, but like the work has only just started, and we've only just started to acknowledge the true depth, or we've just only acknowledged like the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much work left to be done in flipping the script in just reparations to the people that we've harmed, in many ways in every like facet of our culture, but definitely that. I saw somebody post recently, a UC Berkeley like jazz musician friend that I used to work with. She was like, dude, you like, she's like not really doing that thing anymore, but she was like talking to all of her people like from school, like you guys, like we have to acknowledge how toxic like jam session culture is. You can't be part of it as a woman. You can't,
or you get I don't know, like I guess in the acting industry you'd be typecasted, right? Like if you're a woman, everyone automatically assumes you're a vocalist, and then vocalists already have a bad reputation set by instrumentalists, like, oh, they can't do this or they can't do this, you know, or, you know, it's a bunch of bullshit, you know. And it's like, imagine the amount of voices we've lost because of that kind of culture,
because they felt excluded and they just switched fucking careers, man.
Yeah, like that is something that is like, you know, makes me emotional every single time. It's like, just how many voices were shut down, you know?
Yeah. And they just decided to do something else.
Yeah.
And I mean, regardless of whether or not it was their career, like, they just didn't have a spot in the culture.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't give it to them.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not always just like the jam session too. It's like the gig scene, or even at college. You know, they like, I don't know if you guys ever been to college for music, but there's like separate, you know, classes for vocalists, and like I had to take a keyboard class for drummers, you know, and it's like, well, that's a whole other story, but it's just interesting, like how when you have a huge monetary like system, and then competition starts to set in. And I'm like one of those guys that's like anti-Grammy, anti-Emmy kind of thingy. Like any type of competition in his art is just bad for it in general. So, yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, that's a whole other conversation I'd really like to have with you for sure.
Yeah. But I was going to ask you, Nick, when do you think community becomes more important than the art itself?
Oh, that's a good question. Could I speak on that really quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I think Photo Walks is a good example of that, because like, as we're all photographers and we've all been on like photo walks, but sort of as somebody in a leadership position at LA Photo Alliance, I found that I wasn't prioritizing me getting good pictures on photo walks. And I was just prioritizing sort of like heading up the back, making sure everybody was with the group if they wanted to stay with the group, and like reaching out to people who haven't spoken to a lot of people, make sure they like see what's up with them. And
I barely took photos on the photo walks.
Yeah, so, I don't remember you taking any photos on the photo walks.
So in that way, I think like when the community was strong and like it had a good vibe, we keep calling it like an inclusive spirit to it, then that was already more important than our individual creative endeavors on the photo walks, at least to me.
I think that the question is like, well, I think that we have to learn a lesson between of prioritizing community and personal practice separately, because you know, if in a lot of cases you can't just totally kill two birds with one stone, like Chris and I found we couldn't really do ourselves. Like we couldn't really be like focusing on our personal practice while we're out at these photo walks. And I'd argue that even the people that weren't organizing them, you know, they're taking like photo walk photos. They're taking a lot of snapshots of their friends and whatnot. There are multiple questions here. I think the questions are like, are they hobbyists? Is this like a hobby and a good social meetup for them? And, you know, then whatever their career or personal practice, like, you know, that's just another thing that they do later on down the line, or we're just getting them into it, or they practice their, like, Hyro is the first person that comes to mind. Like, he just came out to the photo walks and he would take fun portraits of people, but he's got a career that like, he's like 17. He was like 16 or 17 years old when he started coming out but he was already working on his career. He was doing two different things there. He was having a social, like he was going out to a social event that happened to overlap with his like career practice interest. You know, they overlap a lot. And I think that, you know, if we struggle with that balance at all, we need to just because Hyro didn't seem like he struggled with it. To some people, I think it comes more intuitively, or they already have like a good background and are feeling confident in their footing of like their personal practice and maybe their career, if it is their career, if art is their career.
Right.
And then like the social / community aspect. You know, make time. If you're finding like they're not mutually exclusive, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. I wonder,
Community.
I find that when somebody joins a community, because you have people who join a specific community for multiple reasons. You might have somebody who recently retired and likes the look of a Leica, and then they just want to go out and do something because they're bored now because they're retired, and I feel like that's when the community becomes more important than the art itself, is like just being able to be there for people, because you never know where everybody's mental healths are. It's like someone
Yeah.
might be bored, someone might be depressed or scared or whatever, and it's just like forming those types of communities are just like, I don't know, to me it just seems more important than whatever we're doing. Like you said, like no one's like taking like super artistic photos. We're all just taking photos of each other because we're friends now, right?
Yeah.
And it's like maybe that experience gets people to be motivated to do something super artistic or something like that.
It certainly did for me.
Yeah.
It made photography stick for me, that like even now that the photo walks aren't a thing, like just the fact that community existed, and by off of like the strength of the resources that like I was fortunate enough to gain just by like other people's encouragement, other people's camera advice, their knowledge, the people lending me cameras or whatever, like I don't know if I would have had the confidence to feel like to just like proceed with it and get as far as I have with it, to the level of enjoyment that I have, or whatever, a potential career. Certainly.
Yeah.
Since we're live and people could be tuning in at any time, I just want to like remind everybody, this is the Art Take podcast. Whether you're watching on YouTube Live or Nick's stream Carbon Punks, and we do episodes monthly, and we just tackle like any kind of topic. We're doing a series of interviews now. This first one is with Nick, and it's about community. So we've been talking about community a bunch. All of us share a community in Los Angeles Photo Alliance, and for the past like 30 minutes, we've been talking about that and our experiences with it, how one would go about like starting a community, or what kind of things to look for in inclusive communities. And if you missed any of that, you can find it on our YouTube channel. We'll have the live thing all recorded up, and then we're also going to we're recording the audio version for release on our podcast, The Art Take. So just a quick plug. This brings me back to my radio days. It's like you guys are tuned into The Art Take. But to change gears, so let's say like I'm new to an art form and I'm looking for like some sort of community. Do you all have any advice on like where to look, or like what to look for like not necessarily a photographer, but maybe like using the avenue of photography? Like what should somebody trying to get into a community do if that's something that they want?
Well, it's really easy to say what you could do for photography, because we've already done that, and but we also did it in LA, where I think there is like this never-ending pool of film photographers who would come out. So I think it would be like, you'd have to consider other factors if you're in a smaller city, or if you're in like just a different practice. But just like take painting, for instance, in like a somewhat smaller city than Portland. I mean, like Portland, or other than Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And I mean, also like during COVID times is I think is another conversation, but it's really easy to do on Twitch. I would just say, like, don't hesitate to start doing something on Twitch and building a community that way, because it doesn't matter if somebody else is already doing it. Doesn't matter if a lot of people come out. Doesn't matter, dude. It doesn't matter if your friend is already doing the same thing. You guys can boost each other. It'll work really well, I think. If you have friends that are already doing it, don't worry about being original. Just worry about just put yourself out there, be inclusive, start talking to people. It's going to be mutually beneficial, straight up. You just don't have to worry about anything, man. You don't have to worry about doing it 100% right. Unless you're like a super perfectionist, you already have a lot of resources, then by all means, put some money into getting a good like platform set up, be it in real life or Twitch, or just online. Right now, I think we have to talk about online. You could put some resources into it. You could make it perfect right before you go. If you're the type of person to just work on it, I'm the type of person to just like, just start doing it and then be figuring out the details later.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're starting something from the ground up, like it doesn't have to be perfect. And you just bring people in, make sure the vibe is good, make sure it's inclusive, just acknowledge that you have a platform and do something good with it, and don't have it just be self-serving. And I think that it will figure itself out from there, like one way or another, whether like you're doing a painting channel, like tons of people are already doing this sort of stuff on Twitch. But I like, for instance, in real life, you could just have a painting meetup. Even if people are already doing that, like you could say that Beers and Cameras was already doing something pretty similar to what we were doing, and there are tons of people who just in like talking about photography in general, don't want you to start doing something if somebody else is already doing it. But don't hesitate to just start your own community. As for advice of like finding a community, I don't know, man, start your own. Unless there's something that already exists in your art form that you feel like is a good fit for you, don't hesitate to start your own. It doesn't have to have a similar amount of resources or a similar amount of clout to anything else. In fact, I think it'll be more genuine and just a better vibe if you're not focused on clout and perfection and having a professional like speaker or having the coolest gear or whatever. It'll be a good vibe, and the resources, you can find the resources and the perfection like later on. Just start doing it.
Yeah.
Just invite your friends who are into it.
Yeah.
Invite random people who are into it. Add people on Instagram that you don't know that have just used the hashtag, 35 millimeter film or oil painting or whatever. Just add them and talk to them,
Yeah.
People will like it if you're friendly to them.
Network is like a term that I don't like, but like it doesn't have to be like networking. It could just be like talking about a thing you're passionate about with somebody.
Yeah. Networking could be like a term, like if you're using networking like a businessman or like a business person, if you're thinking about it in like a business way, then it could be kind of like shitty. But I mean, making friends is networking. Having a conversation with people about what we're doing right now is networking. I guess we already know each other, but like, just talking to people about stuff is networking. Networking is a good thing. Making friends, making people feel included, asking them about their experience is networking, and it's also inclusive. Ask them about their experience. Ask other people. You'll learn something from it. They will feel good about being included. You guys are both going to learn something. Yeah. Ask a lot of questions. That's ask a lot of questions about other people's experiences and show interest in other people's experiences. It's not just to be nice to them. If you're just doing it to like make yourself look good, that's mission not accomplished. But but it's going to be mutually beneficial. Just be fucking genuine. It's going to work.
Yeah. I was going to comment. I was going to comment on like, now it's kind of like, start your own thing because we can't like physically meet up with each other. And my advice is sort of going to benefit that avenue as well. But if you're wanting to join an already started community, there's a few things that I would recommend. The number one thing is to not question your wanting to go. Because the second you start questioning, like, should I go or is this a good idea, is when a bunch of negative talk starts settling in, and the chances of you not going to that community event is a higher percentage if you start just questioning if I should go or not. If your personality is to be questioning and that's just who you are and you know that, then bring somebody with you. Try to bring a friend, even if they don't care about, like in this instance, for photography, if they don't give a, I guess we're all adults. If they don't give a shit about photography, whatever.
We've had those.
They can still come. I know.
Bring your really bring your social butterfly plan.
And just go. The other thing that I recommend, and I'm the type of person that usually doesn't question and just goes and figures it out. But I'm gonna be honest, like my first Beers and Cameras meetup, like I had to bring my wife because I was kind of nervous,
Yeah, I remember that one.
And it's like, that's a very surprising thing for me, like to have that feeling. But it was a new.
And if you're not the type of person to feel that way, think about how it fucking feels when you are the type of person who feels that way.
And that's what I'm saying is like, it was a brand new avenue for me. Like I said, I'm very new to this photography thing, and I think that's why I was nervous.
Afraid of being judged or.
Yeah, because, and this is a segue into my next thing. It's like because I had come from a music background, and how we talked about earlier,
and you're scarred from it.
Yeah, and it's not even that like I had toxic things happen to me as much as other people have experienced in music. I do know that I do know that that's like the situation, right? So that leads me to the next thing is when you finally do decide to go, understand that not every community is going to be the one for you.
Oh my God. Yeah, you're saying exactly what I wanted to say.
Hey, who knows? You go to blah blah community and no one talks to you, or it's like weird or anything like that. Don't let that deter you from trying a new community. Yeah. Because you might go to blah blah 3 community and that one's the shit.
Something very similar, but different enough.
Yeah, different enough, different people, different vibe, different intentions.
Yeah.
You never know. You never know. Just don't let, the first one kill your vibe, because you'll definitely find a community for you.
Yeah. Can I just like echo kind of what you were saying there? Like, I can't tell you how much I relate to that feeling of like wondering if you should go, or like thinking about the worst case scenario or not fitting in and then not going. I had those thoughts about my own meetups. I wanted to stay home. I wanted to cancel it, or like sometimes just, I think I did a couple times say, Chris, I can't make it to this one. Can you just like take the reins? Because I was just so depressed, or just felt like not up to like the social pressure or whatever. Like, although it was like never a negative thing. And so many times I felt that way, but I went anyway because I knew I had to just do it. And I went, and I went from feeling just, sometimes just the lowest of the low for me, which is like stay in bed all day and probably just stay feeling negative and just reinforce it, my own like suspicions that I'm a failure because I just won't even try. I won't even go. I won't even try. But like I would go from like the lowest of the low, and if I just went out and I just like hung out with everybody, I made like 10 friends that day who have now become like friends that I've had for 2 years, and would help me move if I was moving, or would like, it would just talk through like a hard time with me, or lend me a camera or whatever, dude. Like, because any time you talk yourself out of doing something like that, you really could be just saying no to making like a lifetime friend. You could be saying no to that like conversation that gets you that job in a field that you want to get into, or anything like that, dude. And yeah, I'd also say I just would echo what you said, that like if you go out to a meetup and or any kind of community thing and it doesn't end up like you do have a bad experience, or somebody like shuts you down, because I know that happens in photography. It has probably happened at Los Angeles Photo Alliance, even despite all of our efforts,
Yeah.
And I know that to some people it's happened at like Beers and Cameras things, where they feel like they just had somebody be like, oh, you've only got a Canon A1? Okay. Like when everybody else has like a Leica or whatever.
Yeah.
And, not to say that that's like the prevailing culture of Beers and Cameras. But like I know that people have had that kind of experience. And dude, I know people have had that sort of like had an interaction like that at Los Angeles Photo Line. So it's not like we weren't untouchable or anything like that. But if you let that like show, if you walk away from that with the lesson about community being community, this isn't for me, it's like solitude for me, you're doing yourself a real disservice, because
Yeah.
I totally, solitude is an important part of like any artistic practice. I think being able to do it on your own, being able to just kind of like focus in and have it be a meditative practice as well, it's super important. But it's like not everything, dude. And especially if you live in a big city and you're not taking part in community, like, you're missing out. You're missing out on lifetime friends. You're missing out on career opportunities if that's important to you. Yeah, you're missing out.
It's rough, you know, like without community, honestly, I think I'd be nothing, you know.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm the type of person, like, I like to just go do things and not question it, because I know that I'll just have the negative talk, you know. But I'm also the type of person, like, when I get to somewhere, like, I get overwhelmed with, like, if people do want to talk to me, you know. It's kind of weird. You know, I'm like, oh shit, I don't know what to say. You know, it's like, I don't know.
That's when you ask people questions about their experiences. That was like my tool. I don't know how I learned that or whatever, but I totally feel overwhelmed. So all I do is just ask people what they do for work. Do they like it? What camera are you shooting? What film are you shooting? Like, what do you like to shoot? Ask them just everything. Where do they stay at? Like, what neighborhood do they live in? Do you like it? How much does it cost? Whatever, dude. If you're feeling anxious, just ask people about their lives, because, I mean, it's important advice to me, just because, you know, when you're depressed or like have social anxiety, it's kind of like a centering of yourself. Like, will people like me enough? Like, it's all about you. It's not all about you. It's really like getting along with other people is all about them. Making them feel like you care, making them feel like you're interested. So just ask people questions if you're nervous, and be it on the internet or in real life. It's gonna work out.
And I was gonna like kind of harp on that too. Like, when you're going to like a community event that you know that like you like and the people there like also, just keep that in mind. Like, if you're being nervous about like talking to people or like making friends, is that you're all pretty much there for the same thing. I mean, you still have to like suss out the group and like see if it's like a fit for you, or like their goals are aligned with your goals for a community and stuff like that. But that's like the main thing. Like, for a photography community, it was kind of easy because we all wore like our things over our shoulders, or you could just be like, hey, this is my thing. And you could like, you knew like, oh, they have a point and shoot, I know how to talk about point and shoots. Or like, oh, they have like
great talking points.
Yeah, a big like medium format camera. Maybe they do portraits or landscapes, and it was kind of like an easy segue. And maybe if you're like doing like a doodle meetup, where, have you seen those where there's like a big table with like paper on it? Like, bring a cool pen, your favorite pen, and like comment on other people's pens and be like, oh, what are you drawing? Like, and just like try to relate to people. Like what Nick was saying, like ask them about them, like don't center yourself. I think like I use that technique too, and I probably learned it from you, Nick, because like whenever I was like, there would be like 30 people in a room at the coffee shop, and like if I was feeling anxious, I would just like go to the new person, and like if I hadn't talked to them before, just like ask them like the list of questions, and like if it went in a cool direction, just like follow that, and then I would feel better.
You'd be like, I'm not the most nervous person here.
Yeah. I was like, new person.
Yeah.
But yeah, it worked for me, man. Like, as soon as I came to one of the meetups, like the first person I talked to was you, Chris.
Oh, for
real? It was, and you were like, oh yeah, hey, how's it going? I was like, oh man, you have a Leica, and you're like, here, hold it. I was like, oh shit, okay, this thing's a lot of money. You know, I've never held one before. You know.
Yeah, that's funny.
You know,
look at you.
I know. Now it's like.
Now we have a podcast together.
Yeah.
and Pete has his own Leica.
Oh, that's right.
Which is the most important thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool. So we've been at it for like about an hour, and maybe we should start wrapping things up. Is there like a topic you all want to like close with? We kind of already touched on something that I wanted to talk about, which was like the importance of community. Like Nick was saying, like in his own endeavors, like artistically and professionally. And we've talked about like the social aspect of like lifelong friends. And so like that's something I just wanted to hit on before we ended. Like if there is a community or you're thinking of joining one, definitely like go out. It'll benefit you in ways that you can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Is all
Or
I'll
start
say.
your own.
Yeah.
Or start your own, for sure.
Yeah.
Just don't
Yeah.
think. Do
You
it.
don't need to be
Just do
perfect
it.
to start your own. You don't need to be sick at whatever the art, like, it does not matter. You're just
No, it
like
doesn't.
sharing your experiences with other people.
Yeah, it's
And
like
have fun.
the thing that like I guess like I want to highlight with what you're saying too, Nick, is like none of the outcome matters. Like it doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be the best. As long as it's your voice, that's the most important thing.
Yeah. As long as you have it like set up in a way that like you enjoy socializing with people and you benefit from it, like it's kind of one of those things where I have to say the cliche point about, it's the journey that matters.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be enjoying like this community that you're taking part in, and just like the, having that meetup or having that stream or whatever, where you're just like talking over stuff with people. Enjoy it. So, like regulate the culture in a way that feels natural to you, because if you're afraid of like somebody coming through and being a dick, you're the one who's in charge. That's the best thing about starting it yourself, is like if somebody's just being a dick or if somebody's dissing on you, like you're the one who's in charge and you don't have to be nice to them anymore. And you could even just tell them like, dude, you're like, the vibe isn't working, man. Like just don't come through if you're going to come with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're the person in charge. You really just don't need to worry about whether or not people have the right vibe. Sometimes it can be a little complicated if you're running things and you have to make decisions about that sort of thing, but you'll only learn good lessons from it, from in that difficult situation. And, suddenly the possibility of being judged is just like, well, take it for granted that you're going to be judged by people, but it's really not, especially if you're a community organizer. It's not about whether or not your art's good. It's about whether or not your community is good and whether or not people like your vibe. Do people think you're cool? Cool people are going to stick around.
Mm-hmm.
If do people think you're like not cool, then like those people aren't going to stick around. It's going to regulate itself.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid.
So we have somewhat of a recurring segment towards the end of all of our episodes. We call it like art recommendations. So I guess we can sort of move into this art recommendation type of thing. We just sort of discuss our past art recommendations, although I think we're going to save Chris and I's past art recommendations for the next episode, just to talk about, what we're going to recommend this episode. But I guess we'll just sort of start with my art recommendation. For my art recommendation for the both of you, and I guess everybody who's watching this, I want to recommend this composer who goes by the name of Moondog. Are you guys familiar?
Moondog. Nope, never heard of it.
So Moondog, he called himself the Viking of Fifth Avenue in New York. He dressed like a Viking. He looked like a Viking. A lot of people sort of assumed he was just a homeless person on the streets of Manhattan and did nothing. And, a lot of people, like a lot of his art, like a lot of the photos of him are like high, wealthy, white people essentially just like looking at him. And I mean, he was white too, but it's like he looked like a homeless person. A lot of people will look at him and be like, okay, who's this homeless person on my street in Fifth Avenue? Because Fifth Avenue is kind of like a big center hub of New York where like a lot of rich people live. Okay. And so a lot of people look down on him, but he was a phenomenal composer, had a very high reputation in the jazz world and the classical world. But he also found a way to have spoken word and poetry. Like sometimes in between his songs, he would recite his poems. And a lot of his music is just, in my opinion, just phenomenal. And he's has a very interesting story. And a lot of his music is very beautiful. And cool. It's just, I like it because it like sort of slams the classism sort of thing, right? It's like, just because somebody looks like a homeless person to you doesn't mean that they have joy in life, or like, you know, they, you know, are enjoying or doing stuff, you know,
Or
or
they might have an amazing artistic voice.
yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
don't shut them out because of whatever preconceived notions you've already had about the person, or what society tells you about people who dress this way or look this way or stuff
Yeah.
like that. You know, it's I kind of, you know, there's a lot of people that could also go down that route, but for some reason I just wanted to recommend Moondog to you guys.
Yeah. That's
And
good
you know
and
what's,
I'm gonna check them
topical.
out.
you know
Yeah.
what's interesting is like a lot of his music have actually been sampled, and
Oh.
I would I would I don't know if I'd be surprised, but like there are some songs. One of them is actually really sampled a lot and often played in like Bed Bath and Beyonds and stuff like that with like some shitty ass drum groove behind it, and someone just like ruins like his songs, you know. But like
Rip.
the original songs that he composed are just pretty amazing. But you can find them on Spotify and iTunes, and you know, if you find his records, I would buy them immediately because they're not rare, but they're kind of hard to come by. But
I'll check it out, Pete. I did a music stream yesterday. It'd be really cool to have you in a music stream because people are just like recommending like little,
yeah,
you know, whatever they wanted to. It'd be really cool to have a variety of music in there too.
let's do
And
it.
you
That's
represent like a rare friend in that you've got like this, you know, taste
Wealth
in
of
music that's
knowledge.
not just like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Well, wait till you hear this guy first.
Look, it's just terrible. Moondog
Yeah.
is absolute trash.
Nice. I have one ready. Do you have one ready, Nick? Or
Yeah, go ahead though, Chris.
okay. Mine was just, I don't have like a big conceptual thing, but it was like an album that I've been into for the past few weeks. It's called Purple Moonlight Pages by R.A.P. Ferreira. And it's like a rapper who's like rapping over like super jazzy instrumentals. And I like it. I don't have a lot of language to describe jazz or hip hop, but I enjoyed the album.
You said R.A.P. Ferreira?
Yeah, Ferreira. There's like periods in between.
What was the
Okay.
title of it called?
Purple Moonlight Pages.
Dope.
Yeah.
Got it.
And also, I just want to say that if anybody's watching live, we're going to be doing like a quick Q&A once we're done with the episode. So just head over to the chat. There's already a few comments on the chat, and maybe we can answer those first, and then we'll get to anybody else who wants to chat with us for maybe like 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah. Sounds good. I'll say my, I wrote it down. I'm also going to put it in the YouTube chat, but
Okay,
I wrote
cool.
it down so that if anybody, I don't know, I just thought that maybe I should put it up here so that people would know the spelling of it. But first thing that comes to mind, and maybe it's backwards too, but
No, it's right.
okay, cool. First person that comes to mind is Bahim Devon on Instagram. You can just find him on Instagram. He's like one of my favorite portrait photographers right now, and he's like super. It might be kind of insulting to say this, but I feel like he's really underrated, or like, I don't know if he's doing paid jobs, but I just stand him like every time I can. Whenever we're talking recommendations, because I just love his portrait work. He does most, like pretty much exclusively portrait, like film photography. And I just think he needs like more followers, and he just needs to start getting hired by brands to like shoot clothing and whatnot, because it's
cool.
just that good.
Yeah, I just checked and I'm already following him. So I'm sure
Big.
that was like through you or somebody.
Yeah, he's like friends of Lapa friends. He just never came out to a meetup. But
Gotcha.
I've photo walked with him before.
Very cool. Nice.
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
The community strikes again.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's been our episode of The Art Take. Once again, you can find us on Instagram at The Art Take. Our YouTube channel, hopefully you're watching, is also The Art Take. Our email is thearttake@gmail.com. Do you have anything to plug, Nick, before we say bye?
Yeah, for sure.
What
Just
you
my
got?
Twitch channel is what I would plug right now, and also like the Twitch photography community, like in general, is super dope. Whether like you're into film photography or digital, especially if you're into digital photography, man, there is so much good, like, you know, and it's not exclusive either. But yeah, I would say check me out at twitch.tv/carbonpunks, because we do like photo content like multiple times weekly. There's like a photo critique where, you know, you can bring your photos and get constructive feedback on them, or hopefully you don't feel like we're ripping your photos apart, but we're going to tell you what could be improved about them, and also what we like about them. And you also just share your work. You can share your Instagram and people will, it's networking, it's constructive criticism, and it's just a hangout where you get to appreciate photography in general and show off your stuff, like in a different format than Instagram, which is really important, showing your work on
Absolutely
than just on Instagram.
Yeah.
And there are also, just check out the Twitch photography community, because you can learn so much about Photoshop. There are people that will just spend an hour sometimes with you,
Oh, wow.
Just like talking you through Photoshop, and you don't have to pay them or nothing, and it's another one of those things. Well, you'll learn so much in half an hour, and you can actually talk to these people too. It's different than just a YouTube video. Check out the art community in general of whatever art you enjoy on Twitch. Yeah.
Cool.
perfect. Well, thanks a lot, Nick.
Yeah. Thanks for getting on.
Thanks for having me. I could talk to you guys for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
An hour went by so fast.
I know.
I love you guys and I miss you guys. I really appreciate you just being able to talk with you, and thank you for bringing me on.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.